Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for your flexibility. As you can see, this hearing has quite a few attendees, which is wonderful. That's why we had to switch from our original meeting that had a capacity limit over to this webinar. And so we're going to definitely be extending the time that we have with you today to make sure that we can take all public comment and hear from everyone. So thank you so much for your flexibility. I am Madison Murphy. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the Department of Agriculture. And the Commissioner of Agriculture, Kate Greenberg, has delegated authority to me to conduct this rulemaking hearing. And this hearing commences at 9:31 a.m. on Thursday, April 24th. During this hearing, we will hear from Department of Agriculture Pet Animal Care and Facilities Act, or PACFA, staff. And we will then move to take public comment. This hearing has no question and answer period, but if stakeholders do have questions for Department of Agriculture and PACFA staff, please email them to cda_rulemaking@state.co.us. And these questions will be shared with appropriate staff, allowing them a chance to respond. This rulemaking hearing is being conducted in accordance with the State Administrative Procedures Act, sections 24-4-101 through 108 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. And this is consistent with the notice of rulemaking that was published in the Colorado Register on March 10th, 2025. Present with us today from the Colorado Department of Agriculture Animal Welfare Division, we have Nick Fisher, Program Section Chief, and Joe Stafford, Director of the Division of Animal Welfare, and Becky Healy from the Division of Animal Welfare. Additionally, we are joined by Kelly Larson, Assistant Attorney General and Counsel for the Department of Agriculture, and Katie Davis, Assistant Attorney General and Counsel for the Department of Agriculture. The Commissioner of Agriculture is proposing these rules as part of the department's rulemaking process to amend rules pertaining to the administration and enforcement of the Pet Animal Care and Facilities Act. Proposed amendments are to parts 1, 2, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. I will now hand the floor over to Nick Fisher, PACFA Program Section Chief, to describe the proposed rule amendments. Nick.
Thank you, Madison, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. As part of this rulemaking process, the Pet Animal Care and Facilities Act program has done an extensive stakeholder feedback process that started in October of 2024 and continued with stakeholder and advisory committee comment and feedback in November 2024 and January 2025. After each meeting, our team has evaluated stakeholder comments and feedback, and our team includes our Division Director, Joe Stafford, Deputy Commissioner Hollis Glenn, and Jordan Beasley, our State Veterinarian Maggie Baldwin, and Commissioner Kate Greenberg. This rule adds new definitions, changes threshold numbers for the breeding, rescue, and shelter of reptiles, updates enclosure requirements for some species, updates cleaning, sanitation, and isolation rules, and updates rules regarding the commingling of animals. This rulemaking adds a new rule requiring rabies vaccinations for all dogs, cats, and ferrets imported into Colorado unless an exemption is granted. This proposed vaccination rule is supported by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, CDPHE, as well as many of our local public health and animal care and control agencies. The public health and regulatory community feels that this rule is important to implement after 2 puppies that were imported into Colorado from Texas last year with 10 of their litter mates tested positive for rabies. This was not the first case of rabies to be imported by a shelter rescue, as a similar incident happened in 2020. Rabies is a serious viral disease that is zoonotic, which means it can be transmitted to other animals and people. Rabies is always fatal once symptoms appear. There is no cure. The only way to prevent the transmission of the rabies virus if you are exposed is by getting the post-exposure rabies prophylaxis PEP treatment before symptoms appear. Testing for rabies requires euthanasia of the suspected animal or animals. Due to the seriousness of rabies and the potential exposure to a large number of animals and people, public health required that other animals in the litter to be euthanized and tested. After testing, in addition to the first infected puppy, an additional puppy from the litter tested positive. Unknowingly, before the puppy began showing rabies symptoms, the infected litter of puppies was displayed in an adoption event held open to the public. As a result of just this one incident, more than 100 dogs in the shelter were exposed to the infected litter of puppies, and more than 50 people were exposed. Anyone who was exposed to that specific litter was required to get the rabies post-exposure prophylaxis or PEP treatment. 11 agencies were involved in this incident, as many of the puppies had been placed in foster homes in several different cities and counties. Assisting CDPHE in the investigation were CDA, several local public health agencies, animal shelters, and animal care and control agencies. The cost of this one public health incident exceeded $270,000. PACFA is a regulatory program. The mission and charge of a regulatory program is to protect the public interest by ensuring that we protect the health, safety, and welfare of not only animals, but people as well. This rule is necessary to do just that. In developing the criteria in the rule for granting and maintaining an exemption, we looked at import requirements from several other states, including Montana, Maine, New York, and Washington State. We also looked at the Compendium of Animal Rabies Prevention and Control for guidance in developing both the rule and exemption requirements. In addition, the purpose of this rulemaking is to implement the changes from Senate Bill 24045, which amended Colorado Revised Statute 3580-106.4, that requires animal shelters and rescues to sterilize dogs and cats prior to adoption. The amendments to Senate Bill 2445 and the proposed rules clarify when an exemption can be granted and the record keeping and reporting requirements for such exemptions. And last, in addition to other rule updates, including vaccination and record keeping requirements for dogs and cats and grooming and boarding and training, grooming, boarding, training, and pet handler facilities. This rule is intended to solidify and strengthen the elements of House Bill 241354, which requires these facilities to notify clients and customers of any outbreak of communicable disease. As a best practice, most of these facilities already require vaccinations for grooming and the commingling of dogs, cats, or ferrets. We feel this rule is important to minimize the potential for disease outbreaks in these facilities that offer pet-related services. The last rule section that we have is an update to change the notification requirements for pet transporters. And that's pretty much a summation of the rule. Thank you, Madison.
Thank you, Nick. So as a reminder, this is the only hearing scheduled for this rule, and its purpose is to allow interested parties the opportunity to provide public comment. If you do have any questions, though, that we will not be able to answer today, please email those again to cda_rulemaking@state.co.us so that we can pass those along to the appropriate individuals, allowing them the chance to respond. We're now going to move into the public comment portion of our meeting, and we appreciate you taking the time to be here to share your perspectives. Many of you provided comments via email, and so thank you to everyone who took their time to submit those around the proposed changes to our regulations. We have a significant amount of feedback that covers various aspects of the rule changes, and we have reviewed all of those that were submitted by email and the comments that were also submitted in other writing formats regarding the PACFA rule drafts. So if you did provide any comment in any written format, we have read and reviewed those, and I'm now going to provide a summary of what those are. And I do want everyone to know that those are part of the official hearing record. So if you were someone who sent in an email to CDA_rulemaking with comments, or if you filled out our Google form and provided comments there, those are all included as part of our official hearing record. Now for a summary of the written comments. On snake enclosure size, Rule 12.11.15 through 12.11.16. We received extensive feedback regarding the proposed minimum enclosure size for snakes, particularly the provision suggesting the length of 50% of the snake's body after 90 days. A significant number of comments, including from reptile experts, veterinarians, welfare organizations, and residents, expressed strong opposition to the 50% standard, arguing that it is insufficient for snake welfare and health. Many advocated strongly for a standard requiring enclosures to be as long as the snake, which is greater than or equal to 1 time its length, allowing them to fully stretch, often citing scientific evidence and welfare principles. We also heard concerns about the scientific basis for standards less than the snake's full length, and about the 90-day delay in applying the minimum size. Thank you for those comments. Additionally, on herptile licensing threshold, which is Rule 2.6, feedback was received regarding the proposed licensing thresholds for herptile, including reptile and amphibian, breeders, shelters, and rescues. Many commenters felt that the proposed thresholds, such as 200 snakes for breeders, were too high and would exempt too many facilities from necessary oversight. A common suggestion was to significantly lower these thresholds. Often the recommendation was to 50 snakes, or to align them more closely with those for small mammal breeders. Thank you for those comments as well. Now, on dog vaccination and grooming facilities, which is Rule 19.5.3. We noted mixed perspectives on the proposed requirement for groomers to verify certain dog vaccinations. Some support for measure for enhancing animal and public health in grooming settings. Others express strong opposition, raising concerns around regulatory overreach, the administrative burden on small businesses, potential barriers to existing grooming care, especially for vulnerable pets, and questioning the transmission risk level specific to grooming environments compared to boarding or daycare. Next, on puppy rescue rabies/quarantine rules, which is Rule 18.4, several comments addressed the proposed rules regarding rabies vaccination and isolation protocols for puppies entering rescue, particularly those under the minimum vaccination age. Significant concern was voiced by rescue volunteers and advocates that the proposed 5-day isolation requirements are impractical for typical foster homes and could severely hinder the rescue operations, potentially leading to negative outcomes for many animals. Additionally, there were two other items that were identified. We received feedback on specific rules relating to the commingling of unaltered dogs and concerns with impacts around sporting and show dogs. And additionally, our final concern that we noted were concerns raised by pet transporters regarding the proposed 72-hour pre-notification requirement, citing administrative burdens and lack of clarity. Thank you all for those comments that were submitted in writing to us prior to the hearing. We are taking all this feedback into consideration as the rulemaking process continues, and we appreciate your passion, right, for engaging with us on this process. As we move forward, we're going to open the floor to public comment, and to ensure that everyone who wishes to speak has the opportunity to do so within the allotted time. So we will be adhering to a 3-minute limit for each speaker. To help us make the best use of our time together, if your point has already been made clearly by a previous speaker, we would encourage you to consider indicating your agreement or support for those remarks by stating that you concur with the points made by the previous speaker's name around a specific general topic. And this will allow us to gather a broader range of insights during our time together. When your time limit is approaching the 3-minute mark, I will gently let you know. Thank you in advance for your cooperation in making this a productive and inclusive hearing. I will first call on individuals who pre-registered and noted that they want to make public comment. If you did not pre-register and note that you want to make public comment, we will call on you after this group. Okay, so to get us started on this, I will call on our first individual who noted in the Google form that they wish to make public comment, which is Dr. Elizabeth Nash, representing the Colorado Reptile Humane Society. Dr. Nash, if you can raise your hand, we can move you to, thank you. Here we go. Okay.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just wanted to reiterate concurrence with the opinions that you are hearing from the public. Colorado Reptile Humane Society definitely opposes any space requirements for snakes that would be less than the entire length of their body. And we feel this is very necessary to allow them normal postural movements and for the physical and mental health of these animals. It would also bring our requirements for these animals in line with expectations about other animals that we are regulating under PACFA. And to keep my comments on the briefer side, because I know we have a long agenda, Colorado Reptile Humane Society is also in support of lowering the thresholds again to bring them in line with what we have with other animals that PACFA regulates. For instance, right now, if we go forward with the proposed very high thresholds for breeders and shelters, Colorado Reptile Humane Society, which has been in operation for 26 years, would never have had to have a PACFA license, which means the public would not have been protected knowing our animal care meets certain standards or that we were even inspected by PACFA. I also looked at the numbers and thought if we are considering these herptile categories separately, snakes, lizards, turtles, and tortoises, and amphibians, each as 4 separate categories, excuse me, then as long as a breeder or us as a shelter was 1 animal below those thresholds, we could have 896 animals under our care without having a PACFA license. This, again, does not protect the welfare of those animals at a minimum level, and it does not protect consumers to have such high thresholds from a facility that would not be under PACFA licensing. Thank you very much for letting me comment.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nash. Okay, we are now moving on to our next individual who is pre-registered and noted that they would like to make public comment. Erin Jones of Mom and Mudd's Colorado Rescue. If you are in the meeting, I would encourage you to raise your hand so I can take you off of mute. I don't currently see any hands raised. We will move on to the next individual, Robert Jones of Mom and Mudd's Colorado Rescue. You've also noted that you wish to make public comment. If you can raise your hand, I can take you off of mute for public comment. Okay, we will move on right now to Dr. Clifford Warwick. You have noted that you would like to make public comment. If you can please raise your hand. Okay, Dr. Warwick.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Well, good morning, Chair, councillors and officials, and thank you again for this opportunity to speak today. I'm Dr. Clifford Warwick, and as a very brief introduction, I am an independent expert on reptile welfare and, along with my team, have researched and published extensively, probably more so than anyone else, on the area of today's topic, i.e. the spatial requirements for captive snakes. Apart from my medical degree specializing in diseases transmissible between animals and people, I also have 5 other advanced postgraduate qualifications in reptile biology, including a doctorate in reptile welfare science. I've also researched, written, and published over 200 peer-reviewed scientific articles, mainly on reptiles, and have twice edited the world's definitive scientific reference volume on reptile welfare, which is published by Springer. I also work as a scientific consultant to many governments, non-governmental bodies, NGOs, and law offices. A major problem with the way that guidance on snake housing has been formulated arises from the habitual promotion and use by the traders and other keepers of the phenomenon of what's known as folklore husbandry, which is essentially pseudoscience and outdated practices. Science has moved on, and the clear conclusion of our extensive work and that of several other university-based research teams determines that all snakes of all sizes, all species, and all habits must be able to fully stretch in all, including temporary enclosures, and failure to enable snakes to fully stretch at will is causally related to at least 20 documented physical diseases, conditions, and scientific concerns, as well as 24 behavioral problems linked to confinement stressors. Relatedly, a major 2023 published scientific review by the British government also concluded that snakes must be able to fully stretch in all enclosures. In brief, there is now more objective scientific evidence establishing the need for snakes to be able to fully stretch in all enclosures than there is available for any other species on the planet. However, there is no scientific data or related objective opinion that supports keeping snakes in any enclosure where they cannot fully stretch. In fact, there are at least 32 peer-reviewed publications concluding that snakes need to be able to fully stretch at will, and there are only 2 papers that conclude otherwise, and both those papers are based on the pseudoscience of folklore husbandry. Accordingly, in my firm view, failure to provide enclosures in which snakes can fully stretch implies gross negligence in respect of duty of care to provide responsible guidance for these animals. Thank you for your time and opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Warwick. We will now move on to Demetrius Dalton from Scenthound. If you have joined the meeting, if you can please raise your hand, we can promote you to speaker. Demetrius, you have 3 minutes.
Hi there, I'll keep it brief. My name is Demetrius. I'm one of the general managers over at Scenthound. I wanted to just speak on the idea of the added vaccinations at grooming facilities. I do think it's a good idea, and I do think it will help the general public and the general pet population stay healthier and well more often.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dalton. We will now move on to Tina from Rocky Mountain Groom Expo. Tina, if you have joined the meeting, if you can raise your hand, we can promote you to speaker. Okay, Tina, you have the floor for 3 minutes.
Thank you. I am Tina Davis, owner of Rocky Mountain Groom Expo in Colorado Springs. We focus on continuing education for professional pet groomers in Colorado. I also partner with my daughters at Sisters Pooch Caboose Mobile Dog Grooming in Colorado Springs. We are concerned about the proposed rule change 19.5.3 that could impact grooming salons and pets with health issues. Groomers specializing in older pets, as we do, face challenges in obtaining vaccinations, and this rule change could deny them essential services. Many pets with health conditions can't safely receive certain vaccinations. Denying them grooming services would compromise their well-being and strain relationships with pet owners. Grooming salons aren't boarding facilities. Pets stay for a very limited period of time with minimal exposure to other animals. Our existing disinfection protocols have demonstrated their effectiveness, as evidenced by the absence of any outbreaks from a single grooming facility in Colorado last year. I urge the Colorado Department of Agriculture to reconsider this rule. Instead of blanket regulations, adopt policies that reflect grooming salons' unique nature. Prioritize education and sanitation while minimizing burdens on an industry crucial to pet welfare and public health. The veterinarian community does not consider Bordetella a core vaccine, so it's unclear why it's being mandated. The rule says must be up to date, but it's unclear if that means yearly or every 6 months. Bordetella's effectiveness is short-lived, and the rule does not specify how many shots are required annually. This could strain dog owners financially. To address concerns, we should align vaccination requirements with county and city ordinances limiting mandates to rabies. Ensure clients rely on veterinarians for appropriate vaccination schedules. Restrict requirements to high-risk situations like boarding and daycare. Collaborate with industry to find practical solutions for businesses, for small businesses. Research suggests some vaccinations provide immunity for about 7 years, exceeding annual schedules. Many pet owners opt for tighter testing before vaccination. This rule change leaves no room for this avenue of healthcare. Adverse reaction rates have reached unprecedented levels with many undiagnosed cases. There's evidence linking excessive vaccination to immune-mediated diseases. If pet groomers are included in the revised requirements outlined in 19.5.3, and it is stipulated that pet owners will be unable to receive services for their animals without meeting the additional vaccination mandates, it is likely that many pet owners will either cease bringing their animals to the grooming salon or seek services from groomers who operate illegally without a Colorado license. Additionally, such a requirement may not be in the best interest of certain elderly or medically compromised pets for whom vaccination could propose greater risks than benefits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tina. We will now move on to our next speaker, Aaron Ingalls. If you have joined the meeting, please raise your hand and we can promote you to speaker. Okay, Aaron, I believe that you are on the phone. We're going to promote you. One moment. Okay, you now have 3 minutes. If you can come off of mute.
Hi, my name is Aaron Ingalls. I run Colorado's largest production facility for feeders. So, just wanted to touch base with that caging. I want to say I appreciate you guys being willing to come to a level that would be acceptable for us as keepers. As we all know, if you go to the zoos would not even follow that standard currently. That would put us at a higher standard than what the zoos would even have. Ball pythons, for example, live in termite mounds in the wild, and they primarily hunt what's called the vole rodent. That vole rodent actually burrows in the ground and eats roots and stuff. So some snakes never have to leave their natural enclosure just to get food. I moved to this state to originally have the freedom to do what I wanted and to be somebody that I've always dreamed I could be. And this state has gave me that opportunity. And without being able to keep my animals at an acceptable enclosure size, I would not be able to live in the great state that we do today. The limits is one thing that does concern me. Now, I just recently come under the understanding that if you were to have an animal, bring that animal in and sell that animal, that counts as two transactions and one as keeping the animal. Pushing those numbers below the 200 could quickly make anyone that just has one litter of snakes require them to have a license. And while we are all for the welfare of the animals, at some point you're just going to be dealing with the average keeper. Most of the people that are doing this on a large scale produce well above that number and will be captured in this license, lowering the threshold. That is all I have to say on the matter. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Aaron. Our next individual who is pre-registered to make public comment is Regina Lazarus with the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. Regina, I see you've raised your hand. Thank you. I'm going to promote you to speaker now. Okay, you have 3 minutes, Regina.
Good morning. My name is Regina Lazarus, and I'm providing comments on behalf of People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. PETA entities have more than 9 million members and supporters globally, including over 100,000 in Colorado. Convenience. That's the justification for keeping a snake in an enclosure that is a fraction of the animal's length. It's not to protect the health and well-being of the animal, which is the PACFA's purpose, because we know, based on an abundance of scientific evidence-based research, that a captive snake's ability to assume a straight line body posture, even in temporary enclosures, is crucial for the snake's physical and behavioral welfare. Breeders and pet stores commonly house a large number of snakes within a limited area by using highly restrictive rack systems or small aquariums, respectively. Typically, rack systems consist of rows of uniformly sized drawers or tubs that do not allow the snake living in each container to stretch out fully. Snakes may be confined to these cramped conditions for weeks, months, or years. Confining a cat or a dog in this manner would never be deemed acceptable. For snakes trapped in these environments, the mental stress and physical impact are just as debilitating. PETA urges the department to require that a snake's enclosure be at least as long as the snake. It's the right thing to do for the snakes and for consumers. For the breeders and pet stores who want to do right by their animals and their clients, it's purely a cost of doing business. The names Kenneth and Lynn Kubik serve as a regrettable reminder of how unlicensed reptile breeders pose a major risk of harm to animals and the public. This couple owned a pet store in Thornton, Colorado, where they sold reptiles and mammals bred and housed in their basement. In 2016, a search of their home uncovered 500 live hedgehogs, sugar gliders, snakes, and other reptiles living in horrific conditions in rows and shelving units and tubs. Most of the snakes had been deprived of water, and many needed veterinary care. PETA can think of no reason that has an animal welfare justification for why, under the PACFA, reptile breeders would singularly have higher thresholds than breeders of other animal groups, and why a breeder who houses hundreds of snakes, for example, should be exempt from the PACFA's licensing requirements. The PACFA can only provide the public confidence that breeders are actually able to provide appropriate care for the reptiles they produce, house, and transfer if the breeder is licensed under the statute. PETA urges the department to lower its proposed reptile breeder licensing thresholds and require that breeders who produce, house, or transfer more than 50 snakes, lizards, or turtles, or 100 amphibians be licensed under the PACFA.
Thank you, Regina.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now move on to our next individual who's pre-registered, Dana Van Sickle with Over the Top Pet Salon. If you have joined us today, can you please raise your hand? Excellent, Dana, I see you. I'm promoting you to speaker. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry if the call is a little breaky. I'm outside right now. I just wanted to oppose the vaccination requirements, especially for lower income communities. I think that it would have a huge impact on whether or not people bring their dogs in regularly for grooming. We're already seeing an uptick in cases of people trying to groom from home just to save money, which we're seeing an uptick in injuries as well. People trying to buy low-cost grooming equipment that results in, injuries to their dogs, or like trying to scissor or whatever. We also see probably at least 50% of our clients are senior citizens on fixed income. And as far as the people that we have talked to about it, they have expressed major concerns on whether or not they can afford these extra vaccinations. It also increases the amount of work we have to do for administration purposes for keeping updated vaccination records for everybody. And like everybody, or like the previous people said, it does also impact elderly pets as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will now move on to our next individual who's pre-registered. That is Douglas Ward of Ship Your Pets and Alaska Pet Movers. Douglas, if you can raise your hand, we can promote you to speaker. Douglas, you have 3 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you guys for the opportunity to speak. My name is Douglas Ward, and I'm the owner of Alaska Pet Movers, a licensed pet transport company and the member of the International Pet and Animal Transport Association. I help relocate animals safely across the world, and including many to and from Colorado. I understand the intent behind Rule 20.14 to improve inspection opportunities for transporters entering the state. But while I support PACFA's goal of stronger oversight, I believe that the rule as written places an unnecessary and unprecedented burden on pet transporters. To my knowledge, no other U.S. state requires a 72-hour advance notice for every interstate pet transport. This requirement would be the first of its kind outside of Hawaii's international quarantine framework and mirrors international protocols more than domestic transport standards. Transport schedules regularly shift due to weather, airline delays, veterinary timing, and requiring real-time reporting on each trip introduces logistical challenges and compliance risks for transporters acting in good faith. Additionally, we already submit detailed annual reports to PACFA, and we follow strict transport welfare and documentation standards, manifests, CVIs, and Part 20 compliance. Adding a layer of real-time reporting doesn't improve animal safety, it simply adds red tape. If the department's goal is to enable inspections during transport, I propose a more effective and enforceable alternative. Require each licensed transporter to complete one in-transit inspection per year, either along a scheduled route or at a designated office. This gives the department what it needs without burdening every single trip. Also, I want to raise an important point of clarification. Under current PACFA language, the definitions of pet transporter and pet handler both describe businesses that transport animals, yet these roles are treated differently when it comes to regulation and oversight. Clear definitions and role distinctions would help everyone understand their responsibilities and avoid confusion. Finally, I'd like to encourage PACFA to consider adding transporter representation to the advisory committee. Our work is growing and highly regulated, often misunderstood, and I would believe our input would be valuable in shaping practical rules like this one. Thanks for your time and for considering a more balanced approach to inspection and compliance.
Thank you, Douglas. Our next pre-registered individual is Catherine Byrne with Stockton Pet Hospital. Catherine, if you have joined the meeting, if you can please raise your hand, we can promote you to speaker. Catherine Byrne of Stockton Pet Hospital, if you're on the meeting, if you can please raise your hand, we can promote you to speaker. Okay, we will move on to Scott Coble of K9 Resorts. Scott, if you've joined the meeting, if you can please raise your hand, we can promote you to speaker. Okay, Scott, you have 3 minutes.
Hi everyone, my name is Scott Coble. I am the owner of K9 Resorts Luxury Pet Hotel. And today I just want to bring it up to the board and everyone on the call to propose a change to Part 14, most importantly 14.10.4, which states that one person or one supervisor must be with 15 dogs at a time in any commingled space. The reason I'm bringing this up, mostly we are very strict on separating our dogs in our daycare areas by weight. So I agree with the 1:15 ratio in the large dog area where dogs are 30 plus pounds, but we also have a dog facility, or excuse me, a dog daycare area, which is small dogs, which is under 30 pounds. And those dogs are much easier to manage. And so I don't feel that the 1:15 ratio should be in place if facilities like mine have a weight separated rooms. I'm part of the franchise advisory committee for our national franchise, so I travel all around the country and I visit all of our different locations, which right now there's about 50 of them open, and we are just a handful, or excuse me, there's just a handful of states that have this very restrictive ratio. And the bottom line on this is it's costing businesses a lot of money because we're having to have extra employees in a room where they're not necessarily needed during those times where we have to have 4 or 5 pet care workers in there, where we could easily do 2 or 3, especially like I mentioned in the small dog area. What that's causing is it's causing an extra, $100,000 to $200,000 in labor, which of course is going to be passed along to the consumer. So we're trying to help keep our costs at a reasonable rate to make sure we're keeping up with the competition, but also wanted to bring that to the attention to see if there was any way that we could put that to a vote, whether it be across the board on all dogs, or whether it's just in a weight controlled environment. And thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Our next individual who is pre-registered to speak is Cassandra Burden. Cassandra, if you've joined the meeting, if you can please raise your hand. Cassandra Burden, have you joined us today? we will move on at this time to Angela Searcy of Res Dog Rescue, Inc. Angela, if you can please raise your hand, I can promote you to speaker. Angela, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'm the founder and executive director for Res Dog Rescue, both animal welfare agency, spay and neuter provider, pet transporter, adoption agency. We do work between 2 states. I also sit as the pet rescue representative for the state of Colorado. It's obviously a very challenging subject here, but I do want to thank everybody for their work on implementing some stricter standards for importation and adoption and all of that good stuff. We all know it's very challenging. I know some of these new rules will be challenging, but they're unfortunately necessary in our evolution as a state. I think bringing it to kind of next steps here, while I feel that these are all great surface level on the books next steps, I want to really urge us over the next year to think a little deeper about how we can bridge the gap to understanding between entities across all of the agencies that are working to protect pets and people. I'd like to also see us work to get better understanding in the numbers behind the euthanasia rates that are happening out here in the state. I'd also like us to look a little deeper at recreating the licensure structures that we have out there, because I don't think that it's quite reflective of what's happening in our state right now. We would also like to see, a lot of rescues have expressed frustration about not really understanding what these exemptions should look like. So maybe some clarity around what it is that we need to do to apply for exemptions and so forth. I think a little more clarity around that would really help. On kind of another level, I do concur with Douglas Ward on pet transport initiatives. I think a lot of what he said was right on. I think if we potentially can look at his suggestions and implement some of that, we might have a better, smoother transition for understanding what's happening in our pet transporter movement. But I also urge us, if importation is really stressing our Colorado shelter and rescue systems, we should really consider placing a moratorium on issuing any new licenses until we can kind of get back on track as a state. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Angela. Our next individual who has pre-registered to speak is Courtney Edmondson with Scrub Up Pet Wash and Grooming. Courtney, if you can raise your hand, we can bring you off of mute. Courtney Edmondson of Scrub Up Pet Wash and Grooming, if you've joined us today, if you can please raise your hand, we can promote you to speaker. Okay, not seeing Courtney, we're going to move on to our next pre-registered individual, which is Rebecca Schmidzinski. Rebecca, if you can raise your hand. Okay, Rebecca, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Spedzinski. I'm a resident of Gunnison, Colorado. I have a background in animal behavior and a graduate degree in conservation biology. I've worked with captive wild and exotic animals, including reptiles, in a veterinary hospital and at an AZA-accredited zoo. Under the proposed draft rules, snakes would be forced to live in cramped conditions half the length of their body. It is imperative that captive snakes be afforded, at minimum, enough space to fully stretch out. Snakes naturally exhibit straight lines, stretched out postures, and locomotion. Therefore, a fully stretched out behavior is not only normal for snakes, but necessary for healthy activity and essential to their welfare. Small cramped conditions also limit enclosure features such as hides, pools, and branches that promote natural behaviors. Research has shown that snakes who are confined to smaller, less enriched enclosures, such as those in which they could not fully stretch out, display greater signs of stress and abnormal behaviors. Abnormal behaviors can often lead to other health issues, and chronic stress can weaken their immune system. Snakes are ectotherms and require heat from outside sources to regulate their body temperature, which means not only needing heat sources to warm up, but also cooler areas to adjust their temperature. Snakes also have other specialized needs, including requiring specific humidity ranges and UVB light to maintain their health. Confinement in small spaces fails to allow for these gradients and variations, which can often lead to physical and mental issues, including injuries, diseases, infections, UV or vitamin deficiencies, and death, among others. In addition, the proposed amendment would allow reptile and amphibian breeders to confine hundreds of animals without requiring a license and therefore without any regulatory oversight. Please lower the licensing threshold for reptile and amphibian breeders to that of small mammal breeders. This would allow more animals to be protected by ensuring that they are provided with better conditions necessary for their health and welfare. There's currently no federal laws protecting captive reptiles and amphibians, so these captive animals in the state of Colorado depend on the Colorado Department of Agriculture to ensure that, at the very least, their basic needs are met. Being able to fully stretch out their bodies is just as important for snakes as other basic needs. And lowering the licensing threshold of reptile and amphibian breeders to that of similar small animal breeders would help ensure that more animals' needs are being met. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Our next individual who has pre-registered to speak is Gabe Buckley. Gabe, if you can please raise your hand, I can promote you. Excellent. Gabe, you have 3 minutes.
Excellent. Hello, everybody. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. I grew up in Colorado, been here my whole life. I have a master's degree in zoo, aquarium, and animal shelter management from CSU. I've worked as an animal care technician at the USDA's National Wildlife Research Center in Fort Collins, working with snakes, turtles, and other reptiles and amphibians. And I've also been a consultant for major zoos and aquariums across the United States. And from this body of experience, I'd really like to advocate for stronger regulations to protect captive reptiles and amphibians. I'll try to keep it a little short here. I'd like to concur with Dr. Nash and Dr. Warwick. The 50% rule has no basis in science. Every wild snake has the opportunity to stretch its body to its full length, regardless of if the species is sometimes more sedentary. And that's what we're asking for. It's common sense that you would never ask any animal to spend its entire life in a container that's shorter than the size of its body. I've seen firsthand experience of snakes in these conditions. They sometimes pace around the edges of the cage, pretty desperate, pretty bored, looking for any way out, looking for any sort of stimulation. And this is how they spend most of their lives. Other snakes just stop moving entirely. They quit exploring the small space they have available to them, and they become very obese. And so, to Dr. Warwick's point, we see lots of injuries and suffering in snakes that are kept in facilities that operate with these size of cages. There's also, the limit for why reptiles, you can have so many more reptiles before you have to get a license. It just doesn't make sense. Reptile care is more complex than a lot of the mammals that we have regulations on, and so they should have just as strict requirements. In short, just, snakes can feel pain. They can suffer just like any of the mammals that we are regulating. They need at least 100% of their body length to be able to stretch out. And we should definitely lower the licensing threshold. If you're going to be a snake breeder and you're going to try to, make money off this, or do it for a living, or do a large quantity of it, there should probably be some oversight involved. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Gabe. Our next individual who has pre-registered to speak is Aaron Wise of Denver Animal Protection. Aaron, if you can please raise your hand, I can promote you to speaker. Aaron, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, I wanted to speak on 11.12.3 about requiring shade structures outside in the yards if that's above 70 degrees. We've had outdoor play yards without shade structures for years and been able to manage them responsibly by educating our volunteers and our staff on how long to have animals outside, and by removing that requirement that shelter and shade is not required during supervised exercise. We're going to eliminate a lot of our enrichment and exercise opportunities for our already at-risk population who is requiring additional exercise and enrichment just due to longer shelter stays and overpopulation. by also requiring in 1221 that all surfaces of common areas be constructed of materials that are water resistant and can be cleaned. That means that our outdoor play yards that currently have grass and mulch, which gives the dogs an opportunity to stretch their legs and exercise, not on concrete and not on a hard surface, again, is going to eliminate a lot of those enrichment opportunities that increases the welfare of the animals. And then I'd like to move on to 13.2. By adding the requirement that all common areas, including those play yards, be fully sanitized after every individual animal has been out there. For organizations like myself, when we're extremely full, which we have been facing a lot in these recent years since COVID, we have to remove animals from the kennel to clean. We don't have the ability to move them back and forth via guillotine door. By requiring that those yards be fully sanitized in between every animal, we're going to be adding a very large amount of cleaning time every morning to our staff that really just will make it entirely unrealistic for us to clean in a reasonable amount of time if we're considering that 5 to 10 minute contact time. It's also going to encourage us to, since it allows us to do play groups in those yards between cleaning, it would just encourage organizations to do large, potentially unsafe play groups with potentially not enough supervision. And then for the proposed 18.24, prior to a dog and cat being placed in a foster provider, the animal must be in the rescue for the shelter's possession for at least 14 days. We frequently receive animals into our care that require fostering immediately after they've been here due to medical or behavioral or long-term court cases. It's also a way that we manage our population so that we do not have to euthanize for space, as well as limiting transmission of disease. This would absolutely impact our ability to continue to function responsibly.
Thank you, Erin. Our next individual who has pre-registered to speak is Bree Maestas of Peak Legacy Ranch. Bree, if you can please raise your hand, we can promote you to speaker. Bree, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for bringing this proposed rule change and for the opportunity to comment. My name is Bree Maestas. I am the owner and operator of Peak Legacy Ranch. My comments center around the inclusions of vaccination requirements in Part 18. I thank you for bringing this change as it helps to address the growing problem of puppy trafficking and the black market importation. I support this vaccination requirement in general. My sole focus is the exemption process. As we know, the rabies vaccine is considered unsafe for puppies under 12 weeks of age. My concern is that without clarification as to the granting of the exemption for puppies under 12 weeks, we could inadvertently create a loophole in the oversight. My main concern is in the wording of the language in 18.4.4.2, which suggests that the granting of the exemption is solely at the discretion of the commissioner. To help improve these issues, I suggest the exemption language be changed to read exemptions shall be granted for dogs and cats and ferrets who are too young to be vaccinated based on vaccination label requirements. However, this exemption shall only be granted if the licensed facility adheres to the following procedures and requirements. Puppies under 12 weeks of age can be transported into the state of Colorado as long as the facility they are from has record that every dog over 4 months of age in the facility has been vaccinated for rabies virus according to the state law guidelines to be recorded by a veterinarian on the CVI. I would also like to propose to the Rule 18.4.4.51, hold all dogs and cats imported for resale of adoption at the facility for a period of 3 days instead of 5 days. I do feel a holding period is necessary. However, if a licensed facility is meeting all requirements, 3 days is sufficient. This would lessen the burden on the rescues and shelters and also provide for a faster adoption process. Thank you for your time, and we hope that you consider incorporating the small but crucial changes into the rule. Thank you.
Thank you, Bree. Our next individual who is pre-registered to speak is Douglas Johnson of Sunrise Woodman Dog Kennels. Douglas, if you are on, I can promote you to speaker. If you can please raise your hand. Douglas, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to go ahead and speak today. I'm the owner of 2 large boarding kennels here in Colorado Springs. We also go ahead and do grooming along with my son's daycare. My concerns are as far as onto the vaccine requirements. We have people here in the Colorado Springs area that go ahead and use their own vaccines. They purchase them either through the Big R or through Pikes Peak Animal Supply, and will go ahead and vaccinate their own animals except for the rabies. And we go ahead and we accept those as far as with the receipt showing that the dogs, the data purchase and so forth onto them. Also, too, as far as in the one section there with the altered dogs, many of our clients, since we deal with show dogs, are dogs that come in that are not neutered or spayed. And it is going to cause an issue as far as maintaining those dogs into our facilities. We would like to go ahead and see that revisited and make some type of exemption as far as for dogs that are intact that have good temperaments and personalities. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Doug. Our next individual who is pre-registered to make public comment is Brooke El-Marari of Little Brown Dog Pet Grooming Studio. Brooke, if you can please raise your hand, I can promote you to speaker. Brooke, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, I am reaching out from a grooming salon. We work straight through with each of our dogs. We are appointment based. So we don't really have downtime. None of our dogs commingle. And so for us, it feels inapplicable. We are in the city and county of Denver and therefore already collect rabies documentation. So we have hands-on experience, the backlash from clientele who either don't have their dog groomed because they don't have the rabies documentation certificate on hand. They want to give just the tag or their their city and county license instead of providing the rabies documentation, because it's an added strain not only on our staff but on the veterinary staff, the receptionist desk there, to be shuffling papers around. So I do feel like there's a different way to go about all of this and kind of automating things so that AI does it for everyone. There's different companies and programs, and if our license fees could go towards supporting that instead of supporting other things that are not necessarily benefiting. Case in point, the issues that were faced with the shelter that brought in the puppy that had rabies already had other things that were being addressed by PACFA. And so I feel like wholly as it is, they could have avoided things going forward. And I feel like that was on the shoulders of the PACFA staff to be doing that. I agree with, I believe her name was Tina Davis from Rocky Mountain Groom Expo on all of the points that she shared. I feel that last meeting, Nick Fisher had mentioned that this was kind of a brainstorming session when they were doing the rulemaking. And so adding grooming into that rule may have been a mistake. So I would like to go back to that last meeting when we were kind of restricted from giving comment and having that opportunity for Q&A. I feel across the board, grooming salons have a lot to say about the strain that it would put on staff and the strain that it would put on clients to be able to seek out our services on a routine and safe basis if they have to jump through all of these hoops. State of Colorado or city and county of Denver requires that everyone is vaccinated with rabies. Other than that, the Bordetella, distemper, parvo, parainfluenza are all up to an owner, and that's being a responsible owner.
Thank you, Brooke, for your comment. Yes. We will now move on to Sabrina Pacha of the ASPCA. Sabrina, if you have joined the meeting, please raise your hand and I can promote you to speaker. Sabrina Pacha of ASPCA, if you can please raise your hand, I can promote you to speaker. Okay, Sabrina, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
This is Sabrina Pacha on behalf of the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. We just wanted to highlight that we would like to see more clarity to the rules on transport notifications to account for any unexpected events that might happen, and to also ensure that we are not unnecessarily having dogs wait longer in instances of a cruelty case or something like that, just to adhere to the 72-hour notice requirement. We also wanted to caution that the 14-day hold upon vaccination prior to transport might result in dogs and cats being in shelter environments for longer, which could spread contagious disease more easily. So we would recommend vaccinating and moving as quickly as possible to get the animals out of a shelter environment to reduce the likelihood of contagious disease spreading. And that's it for us. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide feedback.
Thank you, Sabrina. Our next individual who has pre-registered is Janet and Bill from Stubby's Grooming Salon. If you can please raise your hand, I can promote you to speaker. Okay, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Janet Huffer. My husband and I own Stubby's Grooming Salon and Furry Friends Inc. in Colorado Springs, Colorado. My comments and concerns are relative to the proposed changes to Rule 19.5.3 regarding vaccinations and its application to include grooming facilities. As you are aware, there is no state statute requiring any vaccine for dogs or cats in the state of Colorado. There is only statute CRS 25-4-607, which delegates the Board of Health in a county to require a vaccination for rabies. It is left to the counties and municipalities to implement regulations surrounding vaccination of pet animals and licensure. A piece of legislation was put forth in 2016 by Representative Joanne Janal to require the rabies vaccination, but it was defeated in the House on the third reading. Subverting state statute through the rulemaking process, requiring vaccines that are not required by state law, is in violation of CRS 24-4-103 regarding rulemaking and licensing procedures by state agencies. No rule should be adopted unless the record of the rulemaking proceeding demonstrates the need for the regulation, proper statutory authority exists for the regulation is clearly and simply stated, and most importantly, the regulation does not conflict with other provisions of law. Implementation of Rule 19.5.3 as currently written will create a significant barrier to pet owners accessing essential care for their pets through grooming. Overly burdensome vaccination requirements can and will unintentionally harm vulnerable pets by creating barriers to the essential care that groomers provide. It should be noted the proposed vaccinations are not even required for veterinary care. Veterinarians, on the whole, only require a valid rabies vaccine in the municipalities and counties that require it. As you are aware, there's a critical need of more veterinary care and access throughout the state of Colorado due to a lack of veterinary professionals. The requirement of these vaccines for owners to access basic care through grooming will strain an already strained system. Of concern is the fiscal impact on pet owners. This is an incredible financial burden to access veterinary care and receive the vaccinations yearly. The choice to vaccinate pets outside of locally governed law and regulations as set forth should only be made by pet owners and their veterinarians. This rule change forces grooming facilities to become the vaccine police, which is outside of our scope. Please do not subvert the will of the people and implement vaccination requirements that will be in direct conflict with current state statute. I would ask that you please remove this proposed rule change as it applies to grooming facilities and instead deal with rules that deal with other PACFA facilities, such as the rescues where the major case occurred.
Thank you very much, Janet. Our next individual who has pre-registered to speak is Suzanne Morgan of Cooper's Companions. Suzanne, if you can please raise your hand, we can promote you to speaker. Suzanne, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Morgan, and I'm the founder and director of Cooper's Companions, and we're a foster-based rescue in Pueblo, Colorado, or around Pueblo, Colorado. And you know, I was looking at my PACFA statistics before this meeting, and you know, I did 103 dogs, and 77 of them were adult dogs. And I guess what doesn't show on my PACFA statistics is how many old grandma dogs and how many dentals, how many, even an amputation this year, and the vet costs. And, you know, I do bring in dogs from out of state, and I do bring in mamas and babies from out of state. And we've done an exceptional job with these mamas and babies. And these little babies, you know, unfortunately, rescue is a business, and I am not made of millions of dollars, and I don't have millions of dollars. And these little babies that we bring in from out of state, well, you know what? They pay for my old grandma dogs, and they pay for spay and neuters, because I do spay and neuter each and every one of my animals. And we do get that vet care, and that money's got to come from someplace. And, you know, if there's a place here in Southern Colorado where there's a plethora of Chihuahuas or Dachshunds or any of those, the little dogs, because we're a little dog rescue. We don't do big dogs. We don't do, and honestly, I'm afraid of big dogs. And that's why we do little itty bitty dogs that are under 20 pounds. And that's Cooper is a Dachshund. And that's how we do things here in my little rescue. And so I am concerned, and I do agree with Sabrina, and I do agree with Angela that we do need to make some changes. And I do believe we need a license category for, you know, those larger rescues that bring in, you know, quite a few more dogs. And maybe I just don't understand all the rulemaking. I maybe that's it, but you know, this is going to impact me, and it's not just going to impact me. It's going to impact the people of Pueblo and Pueblo County, and all the way from here to Kansas and here to New Mexico, on my ability to be able to bring in those old grandma dogs. That's what Cooper's is all about, and so. You know, I'm worried. And because I just don't, I found a way to keep my rescue going. I found a way to help my community. And I just feel like I'm getting cut off at the knees.
Suzanne, thank you for your comments. Our next individual who has pre-registered to speak is Phil Goss. Phil, if you can please raise your hand, I can promote you to speaker. Phil, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Phil Goss. I am president of the United States Association of Reptile Keepers. And I would like to say that USARC supports the final proposed amendments to 8 CCR 1202-15 regarding reptiles and amphibians. The proposal reflects a collaborative and informed approach to policymaking, and it sets the stone for a continued productive relationship with the Colorado herp community. We appreciate all of the staff's work and communication on these amendments, especially the 3 workshops that allowed stakeholders to engage. PACFA staff took the time to explain the proposed changes and why they were happening thoroughly. And after hearing some other speakers, I have some additional notes. Equating reptile and amphibian biology and physiology to that of mammals is an unscientific and unreasonable analogy. Additionally, you were hearing about other husbandry issues, not enclosure size, causing problems such as improper temperature, lighting, and humidity, or overfeeding. It's important to note that there are hundreds of snake species kept under human care, and they have different husbandry requirements. Also, there are Colorado animal welfare and cruelty laws that are applicable to those outside of PACFA licensees. And that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Our next individual who has pre-registered to speak is Carol Laughlin of Sparkles Grooming. Carol, if you can please raise your hand, I can promote you to speaker. Carol, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you, PACFA board members, for the opportunity to speak today. I'd like to clarify something. This is actually the first forum in which groomers have actually been afforded the opportunity to address the upcoming changes that will affect them, as previous meetings were allocated to other issues and preceding rule changes for various things. So I just wanted to clarify again, this is the first opportunity we've been given in order to adjust these significant proposals for changes to the rules. Anyway, I'm a professional groomer and a small business owner in the pet care industry. And before I share my concerns about the proposed rule, I'd like to give you some of my background. I've served as a vice president of an animal shelter, founded a nonprofit animal rescue. I'm a certified dog trainer with experience in training shelter dogs. I've been a groomer for many years, and I currently own and operate a small local grooming salon. I've been in the trenches with puppies and adult dogs exposed to a variety of illnesses, and I personally rehabbed litters infected with those illnesses, including parvo, a devastating and deadly disease. I say this to make it clear. I respect and appreciate the need for proper measures to prevent and control the spread of these illnesses. That being said, I'm deeply concerned and strongly opposed to the proposed rule changes to 19.5.3, requiring groomers to obtain proof of vaccination of anything more than the puppy vaccine series and the rabies vaccine from clients before providing services. More specifically, the new PACFA requirement for the Bordetella vaccine exceeds mandatory protocols in all 50 states. Bordetella is a non-core vaccine recommended only when a dog's lifestyle or risk of exposure warrants it. Forcing all grooming clients to comply disregards individual risk factors and compels parents to vaccinate unnecessarily when their pets are unlikely to ever encounter the bacteria. I'm deeply concerned. While the intent to promote animal health is understandable, the practical effects will likely be detrimental, and I'd like to highlight a few concerns. First, the rule represents a serious overreach. Groomers are not licensed veterinarians. Asking us to verify and enforce medical compliance introduces legal and ethical
Carol, I'm sorry, your 3 minutes is up. If I can encourage you to please email your comments to CDA_rulemaking. I do want to make sure that they are included as part of our public record. If you can email those CDA_rulemaking@state.co.us, we'll make sure that these are included in our hearing record. Thank you. Our next individual who has pre-registered to make public comment is Rachel Paulson of Doggy Styles. Rachel, if you can please raise your hand, I can promote you to speaker. Rachel Paulson of Doggy Styles, you have commented that you would like to make public comment. If you can please raise your hand, I can promote you to speaker. Okay, our next individual that pre-registered to make public comment is Nicole Clark of Over the Top Pet Salon. Nicole, if you can raise your hand, I can promote you to speaker. Okay, Nicole, thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the small community of Brighton and all of our customers in this area. I do have a couple concerns. In statute 19.5.3, we are considered a low income area. 40% of our clientele is senior citizens. We do struggle with having people keep up on their rabies vaccinations. The impact to our small businesses, I think would be a lot greater than what you may anticipate. I'm not a very strong speaker, bear with me all. I think there would be a potential an increase in abandoned pets and more matted pets that we may not be able to groom. We would have to send to the vets. I do believe this is also overreach, along with many other groomers that spoke today that said the same thing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Nicole. Our next individual that pre-registered to speak is Dustin Haworth of Pet City. Dustin, if you can please raise your hand, I can promote you to speaker. Thank you, Dustin. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Dustin Hayworth, owner of Pet City in Colorado Springs, and also on the representing the Rocky Mountain Pet Dealers. The main comment is the discussion ongoing around the vaccination, and including the rabies shots that cannot be given to puppies and cats and ferrets under 12 weeks without violating those labeling requirements. While we have the chance for the exemptions, it was unclear on how mandated those exemptions to be able to bring in younger pups besides the holding period. If the leadership of PACFA or the Department of Ag changes, would those exemptions automatically be removed? That's one of the main concerns most of the stores have on the ongoing annual exemptions there. The threshold changes of other animals, while not as low as some of the advocates want to be as far as the reptiles, I think that was a good compromise that we've come into at the PACFA organization to continue to lower those and see the effects going forward. Going forward, my recommendation to the advisory committee and to Nick and the group there is rule changes like this. We probably should have our rule review at the advisory committee broken up into functional areas instead of having one group be dominating of our meeting times at this rule review process for the previous 3 stakeholder meetings we've had, to allow the groomers allow all categories to equal time to review those rulemaking changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin. Jim Boswell, you have pre-registered to give public comment. If you could please raise your hand. Jim Boswell of Give a Dog a Bath LLC. I see Christy Boswell. You now have 3 minutes. Christy, if you can come off mute. Christy, we can't hear you. It appears that you're still on mute. If you can try and come off mute, please. We are still unable to hear you. If you can please email your comments to cda_rulemaking@state.co.us. We will make sure that these are part of the record hearing. Thank you so much. Okay, so this concludes our list of individuals who registered prior to this hearing that noted that they wanted to make public comment. Next, if there are individuals present with us today who would like to make public comment, please raise your hand and I will call on you in the order in which they are presented to us. As a reminder, individuals have 3 minutes to make public comment. Okay, thank you. Our first individual up is Christy Ross. Christy, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Comment opposing Rule 18.4.4.5.1.1 holding period restrictions in foster homes. As a representative of Colorado's animal rescue community, I strongly oppose the proposed language of this rule, which prohibits holding period in foster homes unless the animal is strictly isolated from other dogs, cats, and children under 16. This rule is both impractical and detrimental to the health and well-being of rescue animals. Foster homes are a critical component to the animal welfare system, especially in a foster-based rescue model. For many animals, the transition into a foster home is the first step towards healing, rehabilitation, and socialization. Enforcing isolation from other pets and family members, especially children, undermines the purpose of fostering, delays social development, and causes undue stress on the animals and the foster provider. Further, this rule fails to recognize the lived reality and effectiveness of current foster practices. Foster providers are already screened and trained to identify potential risks and to manage animal introductions responsibly. Imposing a blanket requirement for isolation removes professional discretion and creates unnecessary barriers that will reduce the number of available foster homes. This leads to longer shelter stays, increased kennel stress, and ultimately higher euthanasia rates. Comment opposing Rule 18.4.5 unilateral exemption authority. I strongly oppose the language of this rule, which grants the PACFA commissioner sole discretion to approve, deny, or modify exemptions and allows for immediate termination of an exemption based on noncompliance without due process or an appeal mechanism. This provision centralizes significant power in the hands of a single individual without adequate oversight, accountability, or transparency. It raises serious concerns about fairness, consistency, and potential bias in the application of rules that directly impact the viability of animal rescue and shelter operations in Colorado. Exemptions often reflect the diverse realities and operational needs of rescue organizations, especially foster-based and volunteer-led groups. A one-size-fits-all regulatory approach does not work in our sector, and exemptions are essential tools for flexibility and success in meeting both animal welfare and public safety goals. Placing sole authority with the commissioner to grant or revoke exemptions without a clearly defined, publicly accessible process leaves stakeholders vulnerable to arbitrary or inconsistent decisions. This is particularly concerning given past instances in which stakeholders' feedback has been disregarded or misrepresented. Comment opposing Rule 18.4.453, mandatory contact log for unvaccinated imported animals. While the intent behind this rule may be rooted in disease prevention, the requirement is deeply flawed, both in its practical implications and its intrusion on individual privacy. First, the administrative burden imposed by this rule is excessive and impractical, particularly for foster-based and volunteer-run organizations that operate outside of a centralized facility. Many foster
Thank you so much, Christy. Right now, your 3 minutes is up, but if you can please email me at cda_rulemaking, we can add the remainder of your comments to the public record. Thank you so much. Our next individual who has raised their hand is Kathleen Hull of Donut Day Designs. Kathleen, if you can come off mute, you have 3 minutes. Thank you. Kathleen, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that I'm with a foster-based dog rescue, and I find that a few of these issues are going to be problematic. 18.4.4.5.1.1, relative to the foster homes, that is very critical to animal health and well-being. Being able to make a shelter-scared animal into an adoptable companion animal takes place in the foster home very effectively, and having some of those parameters will be very restrictive. Relative to the rabies requirement in 18.4.1, the rabies vaccines, while we all agree that those are critical, I know of the 350 dogs that I have fostered personally, many of those would be under that rabies requirement. So making that exemption readily available would be critical to prevent animals from being euthanized at overcapacity shelters in other states. And the 14-day holding period mentioned in 18.4.2, again, for the parvo and distemper, will likely cause an uptick in euthanasia in other shelters. I do agree with Suzanne Morgan relative to the small dog rescue options with some of those same concerns she had, and Christy Ross, as well as what Erin Wise had mentioned with the 14-day hold, Bree Masters had mentioned on the rabies exemptions, and Sabrina from ASPCA. So I'll just kind of thank you for the time, and I just wanted to make sure to make everyone aware that the foster homes and some of these vaccine requirements will definitely cause more animals to be euthanized. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathleen. Hollis Glenn? Nope, you're good. Thank you. Okay, our next individual with the raised hand is Dana of Wolf and Willow Puppy Rescue. Dana, I'm promoting you to speaker. If you can come off mute. Okay, Dana, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. I just first wanted to say, was not planning on speaking today. I did just want to say a few things. I was hoping more people were going to speak for rescues and stand up for the underage puppies in other states that will likely die if all of this is passed. Of course, PACFA's goal is to protect animals and not hurt them. But in real rescue work, flexibility and case-by-case judgment can sometimes lead to better outcome than blanket rules. Rescue is obviously not the same as breed-in. Backyard breeders sell puppies, rescues find good homes for them. Breeders will increase in the state of Colorado if rescues are not bringing puppies into the state and finding them good homes. Puppies will always be wanted, and people will always want them. And so if they're not adopted from us, they will be buying from breeders. Let's see. And also another thing, just to make it clear, you have qualified fosters, medical care, and the experience necessary to safely manage puppies, and it's not reckless, it's responsible to bring them into the state rather than to just leave them in other states, let those diseases spread and cause more harm than good. That's really all I wanted to say. Again, I apologize, wasn't really prepared to speak, but just not bringing more puppies in isn't going to be, a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dana. Our next individual with the raised hand is Vanessa Toyrila. Vanessa, if you can come off mute, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi there. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Good morning, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to speak. I'm here today not on behalf of any organization, but simply on behalf of myself as a voting citizen of the Colorado community. I want to speak to the snake regulations. One's ability to fully extend its body is not a luxury, it's a baseline biological need. Denying a snake the space to stretch out its full length is the equivalent of forcing a dog to live in a crate that it can't stand up in. We wouldn't do that to a dog, a cat, or any other vertebrate species under PACFA. Why are we doing it to snakes? I grew up with a pet snake who ended up giving birth after we brought her into our home. We were given no notice by the breeder. And I can tell you that snakes feel pain, stress, and suffering just like any other animal, just like you and me. The idea that they deserve less humane treatment is outdated and unscientific. If we treated mammals in this way, it would rightly spark outrage. Providing enough space for a snake to fully stretch out is a bare minimum standard. It should not be the exception. Please, I implore you to try to imagine how it would feel for you to be kept in a container so small you cannot stand up or stretch your body fully. Think about being kept there for 90 full days. That's 3 months of your life. Now think about it indefinitely. It's chilling. I also want to touch on breeding. Under current rules, someone can breed and sell hundreds of snakes per year. That's not a hobbyist, this is a commercial breeder. And yet the licensing threshold for breeding snakes remains far higher than for the overwhelming majority of other animals regulated under PACFA standards. Who benefits from that? It's not the animals, and more importantly, it is not public health or welfare. I don't want to live in a community where people can breed and sell hundreds of snakes per year. Finally, I want to make clear that I strongly agree with the comments from Aaron Wise, Christy Ross, and Kathleen Hull regarding the need for fast move to shelter for animals in volunteer foster care and shelters. Foster care that includes socialization with family members of all ages, as well as the need to have grassy, mulched yards animals can play in shelters that would not necessarily be able to be cleaned after every use by an animal, but are highly effective. I've been a volunteer with the Denver Animal Shelter for many years, both as a foster volunteer and an in-shelter dog walker. And I can tell you, I've seen firsthand how much good it does for both the shelter, the staff, the animals themselves, to get animals into foster care fast, where they can start to socialize, heal, and recover. I also take dogs to play in our grassy mulched yards every single week, and it brings them so much happiness. Without the ability to move animals to foster care quickly, and without the ability to allow fosters in the shelter, to allow animals in the shelter to play outside, the stress of both the shelter animals and the staff would greatly increase. It will also decrease our ability to take in other homeless animals, which will lead to more animals on the street, a less sanitary community, and more euthanasia.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes are up. If you have any remaining comments, you're welcome to email them to cda_rulemaking@state.co.us, and that will be added to the hearing record. Our next individual is Jenny Steinecke. Jenny, if you can come off mute.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. You have 3 minutes.
Perfect, thank you. I first would like to compliment PACFA on adding back in the spay and neuter requirement for rescues. I was so relieved to hear that. My first question, I guess, starts with section 18.4.4.4.1. I'd like to see a definition of disciplinary matter here. I think there can be a lot of variance, a lot of leeway that. So I'd like to see that defined. Section 18.4.4.5, kind of some of these subsections, I feel like there's a lot of questions. If you go specifically to subsection 0.1, it says that the licensed facility must hold all dogs and cats imported for resale, not just the ones imported under the exemption. I would like to know if that was an intentional leave out, or if the intention is that the animals that are imported would be subject to these additional holding requirements. Then if you go down further to, let's see here, sorry. The maintaining a log of all persons who come in contact with the unvaccinated dogs. If you are meeting the above criteria to fit the exemption, I feel like this is kind of like overkill, but also I'm questioning like the time period for this. Is this from intake to adoption? Is this from intake to the first 14 days? What is the time period on this log? My third, I guess, 18.24, prior to a dog or cat being placed in foster provider, the animal must be in the rescue or shelter's possession for at least 14 days. Does this include local owner surrenders? A lot of us rescues take in local surrenders to help ease the burden on the shelter system here in Colorado. I know for myself, we require these animals be vaccinated prior to intake, but they're not coming from out of state. And as a rescue, sometimes to take my own dogs back, if I don't have a foster home available, I will seek out a boarding facility to place my dog where they will have the vaccine requirements met. So I feel like this also could use some improvement so that rescues aren't further burdening the Colorado shelter system with dogs that should be in the rescue's care, but perhaps the rescue isn't able to take them in because they have nowhere to put the dog for the 14-day requirement if it's a local surrender. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jenny. And Jenny, since you did have questions that you brought up, if you can please email those to cda_rulemaking@state.co.us, I can make sure that those get to the right individuals, allowing us a chance to respond. So thank you for
Thanks.
Of course. Our next individual who has their hand raised is Crystal Taylor. Crystal, I have promoted you to speaker if you can come off of mute.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm just a Colorado resident and a foster for a local rescue. I'm here to respectfully oppose the proposed addition to Part 18 requiring all incoming rescue dogs to be vaccinated for rabies before entering Colorado. This change sounds like a simple public health measure, but it would have devastating real-world consequences. Puppies cannot legally receive rabies vaccines until at least 12 weeks of age. Many rescues, including the one I work with, bring in puppies younger than that from shelters in states like Texas and New Mexico where overcrowding is a daily crisis. These puppies are already quarantined, vetted, and transported safely by trusted rescue partners. Just last night, we rescued 11 puppies and their mother from a euthanasia list in another state. If this rule had already been in place, they likely wouldn't have made it out. These are real lives we're talking about, not just statistics. We estimate that 10 to 20,000 puppies each year would be impacted by this change. Instead of being placed in loving homes, many will be left behind and euthanized, not because they're sick or unsafe, but because they're too young for a vaccine. The proposed 5-day hold requirement also puts an unrealistic burden on foster families. We've had to isolate puppies from other animals from anyone under 16 and track every visitor's name, phone number, and address, all while trying to socialize and care for these young dogs. It makes fostering, especially for families like mine with young children, nearly impossible. As a mom, a foster, and someone who has seen the incredible difference rescues make, I am pleading with you, do not let this rule shut the door on safe, compassionate animal rescue in Colorado. Please work with the rescue community to find a solution that protects public health without punishing responsible rescuers and killing puppies who deserve a chance at life. Thank you.
Crystal, thank you for your comments. Our next individual who has their hand raised is Ann Fulton. Ann, I've promoted you to speaker. If you can come off mute, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, still morning barely, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here today on behalf of Pro Animal Colorado, a grassroots community of volunteers and voters across the state advocating for positive political change for animals. And we echo the written comments and many of the past testimonies and urge you to strengthen the proposed rules around snake enclosures and breeder licensing thresholds. The current draft would allow snakes to be confined in enclosures just 50% of their body length. That just isn't animal care, that's confinement. And a snake cannot fully extend their body. A snake that cannot fully extend their body is living in a state of chronic restriction. This causes stress, muscular degradation, and potentially long-term health problems, as we've heard from others. It also sends a deeper signal that these animals are less deserving of basic bodily autonomy than others. PACFA exists to ensure that animals in the pet trade receive humane, dignified treatment, and yet no other vertebrate species under PACFA is permitted to be kept in a space that physically prevents natural movement. So the question isn't whether snakes should be allowed to stretch. The question is, why has it ever been acceptable that they can't? If we get this wrong now, we're not just failing the animals in front of us, we're setting a precedent that will define how future policy interprets animal dignity. And that precedent matters because when society looks back at this regulation, we'll be judged on how we treated the least visible, least protected creatures. So I hope we can lead on that front. We also urge the department to lower the licensure threshold for snake breeders from 100 to 50 snakes. A 50 snake threshold still protects small-scale keepers while closing the door on a loophole that allows large-scale breeding without any accountability. At its core, this is all about consistency, compassion, and integrity. We urge you to update these standards in a way that reflects both modern animal welfare science and the values of a society moving towards greater moral consideration for all animals. And just on a quick personal note, I was fascinated by reptiles as a child, and around the age of 10 all the way into adulthood, I had a beloved pet milk snake named Snoopy. And even as a 10-year-old child, the idea that a snake should be able to fully extend and stretch and move around freely just seemed obvious. So I insisted on getting an enclosure for Snoopy that was at least 1.5 times his full length, which meant his roughly 4-foot terrarium took up a large part of my childhood bedroom, but it was more than worth it. And Snoopy was a cherished friend who was just as sentient as any other pet and full of personality and deserving of just as much care and consideration as any other animal. And that goes with that consideration should be present at the point of sale with all the breeders, etc. So I hope snakes get the same consideration as any other animal protected under PACFA. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Our next individual who has their hand raised is Josh Rolfe. Josh, I've promoted you to speaker. If you can come off mute.
Thank you. I just want to say that I agree with all the comments brought up by Aaron Weiss and others this morning. And I want to underscore my opposition to 18.24 as written. It appears to limit all animals that come through a facility from being placed in foster until they've been with the facility for 14 days. I know at Denver Animal Protection and many other municipal shelters and humane societies, we're targeting trying to move animals through in a much quicker turnaround time. And part of that is keeping our pet population healthy, both physically and mentally, and getting animals out into foster in a timely manner does impact their mental health. We also have seen a strong uptick in owner surrendered animals and just population increases statewide coming into animal shelters. And so I think getting animals out into foster timely is a critical piece of animal welfare in Colorado. In Denver, we do have what we call our Safe Haven program, which allows the shelter to take in animals from victims of domestic violence, people experiencing homelessness that need to get into shelter themselves, or people that have medical emergencies. And many of those animals that we take in through that program go into foster homes immediately upon intake. And if we don't have that ability to send the animals to those those foster homes, then we're going to be limited in what we're able to offer to the community. And that's going to drive more people to either surrender animals or to lose ownership, and it will absolutely impact euthanasia rates in our shelter and likely others. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Our next individual with their hand raised is Connie Vargas. Connie, I'm going to promote you to speaker. If you can come off of mute, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. I will try to talk the best I can. I am a bottle feeder from Texas, and we send a lot of puppies to the state of Colorado, luckily. So I am begging you, from my point of view, that if you make those rules pass, thousands of babies younger than 12 weeks are going to die, like die. And I'm not talking about that we are doing intake of backyard breeders, but here in Texas, we have saved newborns from inside dumpsters, from trash bags in the middle of nowhere. And if you pass those rules of vaccines or stuff like that, these puppies are dying. Like, that's for 100% the fact. Sometimes facts are even worse than something in a paper. So I am begging you, please don't let us puppies here die, because we are trying to help as many as we can. And the main reason we are working with some of rescues in Colorado is just because of our puppies that we nurse every 2 hours with all our heart are going there and follow in foster homes. And that's great for the puppies, because they learn social skills. They are cared. They have to be fed every 2 hours. So, and if you apply these rules, these babies are going to die. And I'm not talking about tens. I'm talking about thousands. And I don't. And if you ask me, I don't really care if rescues there charge money for adoption. I don't really care about that. I prefer that dogs dead here in I don't know, in lands or stuff. We have super less posters here that in Colorado. So please, please, please keep on helping us in Texas. Our puppies depend on these rules not to be act. And I know about the rabies, but you cannot kill thousands of puppies because of 3 cases in I don't know 5-6 years. Please, please, please make changes on those rulings and please keep us helping us. Our puppies deserve it. Please. That's it.
Thank you, Connie. Our next individual who has their hand raised to make public comment is Sean Rutherford. Sean, I've promoted you to speaker. If you can come off of mute, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Sean Rutherford. I am a reptile keeper myself. I've been keeping reptiles for about 44 years or so. I primarily keep larger constrictors. I've been doing that for about 29 years. I wanted to comment a little bit on caging requirements. So there's nobody who doesn't want the absolute best for every animal that we have. I don't know of anybody who has the animal's best interest that's not their first and foremost concern. The issue, especially with the way this is written, is so not every snake is the same. Some snakes are more active and some snakes are less active. Anytime you go down to the Denver Zoo or Cheyenne Mountain Zoo, you don't see their snakes constantly moving around because that's just not what snakes do typically. Like I said, garter snakes, bull snakes, some other active foraging snakes, a little bit more active than things like ball pythons or Burmese pythons or things like that. So a blanket legislation of a requirement doesn't really address all the issues. The other issue I would bring up is under this rule, let's say you have a 10-foot snake. And under this rule, we say, okay, well, the cage has to be 10 feet long. Okay, so if it's 10 feet long and 1 feet wide, that makes the criteria under that rule. So the snake can stretch out, but that snake doesn't really give that much space to really move around. You would actually be better off for having the snake to be in a 6 foot by 3 foot or 6 foot by 4 foot enclosure where it has actual more floor space than just the length. So I want to address like that. And anytime you read research papers, some scientists have been on here, I've read some of their research papers, they always fail to address one thing when it comes to captive bred snakes, is these snakes are not kept in their enclosures 24/7 and never taken out. These are animals that, just like your dog or your cat or your ferret, that are interacted with all the time. So they do get the ability to stretch out and move around because they are taken out during those periods of time. So the research doesn't really ever address that. And I think that's important to keep in mind that these animals aren't just kept in their enclosures 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. These are interacted with all the time. So they do get quite a bit of that activity out in order to do those other things. So I'm running out of time, but I just wanted to give you my input and thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, Sean. Our next individual with their hand raised is Christy. Christy, I'm promoting you to speaker. If you can come off of mute. Okay,
Yes.
Christy, we can hear you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. Thank you to the PACFA Advisory Committee, facilitators, and Nick for your leadership and transparency in the process. So my name is Christy Boswell. Along with my husband, Jim, we proudly own and operate 4 Scent Hound franchises here in Colorado. We have 2 in Arapahoe County, 1 in Douglas County, and 1 in Jefferson County. We've spent our careers building small and large businesses, primarily in the retail space. And since 2021, we've grown Scent Hound into 4 locations. We've created 45 frontline jobs, just added a white collar position to support our growth. And these aren't just numbers. They're families that we employ, careers that we help build, and dogs that we care for with a lot of pride. We didn't get here by just cutting corners. We lead with our first and highest core value, which is dog first. The safety, comfort, and health of every dog is our top priority every single day. We've received positive comments from PACFA employees regarding our facility cleanliness and our sanitation standards, which aren't always typical. And so we always strive for those higher standards. That's why we're deeply concerned about the proposed PACFA regulation 19.5.3, requiring the proof of vaccination for distemper, parvo, and bordetella in addition to rabies. We support smart regulation. We turn away any dog without proof of rabies vaccination. But this particular proposal goes too far. This rule was clearly written for boarding and training environments, places where dogs are commingled and housed overnight. That's not us. That's not most grooming facilities. Our grooming clients are in and out, typically in a very short period of time, and they're never housed or mixed with other dogs. In human healthcare, vaccine requirements vary by context. Summer camps and surgeries have different expectations than a routine doctor visit. The same logic should apply here. A short grooming appointment isn't the same as sending your dog to dog daycare. This regulation will hit working families the hardest. Additional vet visits and vaccine costs will discourage low-income pet parents from seeking essential grooming care, which can harm dog health in the long run. We've seen this kind of overreach before, whether it's in restaurants, retail, or even the most recent economic turmoil. When policies fail to differentiate between models, they do real harm to the operators who are already doing the right thing. We shouldn't be punished for being proactive and responsible. This burden is going to be very costly. We're a family-run business doing things right, and this rule threatens our ability to grow and retain jobs. We ask PACFA to not dismiss this feedback, but to revise the proposal to reflect risk, not just regulation. Thank you so much.
Christy. Our next individual is E.C. Michaels with Cat Care Society. E.C., I'm promoting you to speaker, and you have 3 minutes.
All righty, thank you, everyone. First, thank you to everyone for being able to offer this opportunity to discuss concerns and support around the proposed rules. I want to acknowledge that in Colorado, we increasingly need methods that surveil the prevalence of disease within our animal welfare community, both within the state and those coming in from out-of-state partners. Second, I believe that out-of-state transport should not replace the partnership building within the local community, but rather support organizations who readily take on Colorado animals from organizations with limited adoption, medical, or behavioral capacities. My comment is in regards to 18.4.4.5 Rep 1 and the implications of holding periods. Length of stay in a shelter or facility is the #1 prognosticator for increased risk of illness, stress, and negative behavioral changes. This applies not only to the animal being held, but spills over to the animals in the shelter, negating the protections this rule seeks to serve. Leading experts in the field, such as the Association of Shelter Veterinarians, shelter medicine and research programs at the University of Florida, the University of Minnesota, the ASPCA, and Maddie's Fund, among others, have produced research and best practices indicating as such. Thus, the animal welfare community has worked diligently to decrease length of stay in order to better improve the welfare of animals in our care and increase positive outcomes. While the hold suggested in Rule 18.4.4.5.1 seems short, their impact on animals, including Colorado-sourced animals, could be alarmingly detrimental. I urge the rulemakers to review this abundance of research and best practices and remove these holding periods from the rules. Thank you.
Thank you, EC. Our next individual with their hand raised is Katie. Katie, sorry, one moment. Apologies.
Yep. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Brittany, I'm sorry. I have you up here as well. But we will call on you next. Thank you. Yes, Katie, we can hear you, and you now have 3 minutes.
Great, thanks. This is Katie Parker with Humane Colorado. I have 2 things that I want to speak about. The first one is 13.2, which Erin Wise from Denver Animal Shelter also commented on. The addition of common areas into that rule makes it seem like the addition of the word indoor is also needed. I think that this rule is intended to address only indoor spaces because outdoor spaces do not have surfaces that are required to be able to be cleaned and sanitized. And so I think if you look at the wording of another rule like 12.21, where indoor is specifically called out, then this rule would make a lot more sense to be worded in that way, just with the addition of the word indoor somewhere to make it clear that's what this is talking about. The other thing that I wanted to address is the new addition to 18.27.1, which requires an individualized or tailored enrichment plan for any dog or cat housed in a facility for longer than 30 days. Currently, the individualized plan is required only if an animal is exhibiting behaviors that indicate that it needs additional enrichment to the standard enrichment plan. This addition ignores that requirement for a particular behavioral need and just makes it based on the 30 days. So I think the one of the big concerns is that each of those individual enrichment sessions isn't then required to be documented. And so for an organization like ours, where we might have 50 or 60 kittens currently being treated for ringworm, which by nature of the treatment requires a length of stay over 30 days, that would be an additional 50 or 60 points of data entry every day to document enrichment that there hasn't been a demonstrated need for. And the rule already gives PACFA the authority to require that if the individual animals are demonstrating the need for that enrichment. And so I think this rule adds a lot of administrative burden without getting an additional animal welfare thing that we can't already do with the way that the rules are now. And so I think there's some more work needed to figure out what's actually trying to be accomplished with this rule and how to accomplish it. Thanks, that's all I have.
Thank you, Katie. Our next individual with their hand raised is Brittany. Sorry, I did it again. Apologies, everyone. Brittany Krumholtz. Brittany, I'm going to call on you first. Courtney, apologies, you're going to be right after Brittany. Brittany, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
We sure can. Thank you.
I wanted to speak with regard to the rabies vaccine requirement prior to transport. Just in general, this rule seems very poignantly aimed at the specific scenario that occurred at a rescue that was obviously problematic and therefore does not operate at this point. Since it assumes that the sole source of rabies is from out of state, which is not the case. There's nothing within Colorado that prevents an animal from being exposed to rabies as well. Secondly, responsible rescues already have protocols that do this, whether PACFA is aware of it or not. When responsible rescues are bringing in animals from out of state, the vast majority of them have already gone through a process of staying with local rescues in the origin state while they are vetted and receive all of the proper care and everything. And then they await the transport that is scheduled. And so they're already being quarantined for at least 5 days, if not, some for weeks. And I think that's evidenced by the fact that at least our organization has been doing this for 20 years and we've never had a rabies case come in. And I think that just regulating all organizations based on the lowest common denominator of organizations is disheartening. It's frustrating. We work really hard. This isn't our job. We all have full-time jobs. This is something that we do out of passion, and to be so regulated that we really probably cannot operate if this goes into play, while for-profit breeding, backyard breeding, all of those organizations have somehow escaped the vast majority of these recent rule changes without any explanation. It's frustrating. Colorado is getting a reputation of being a state that wants to put the helpers out of business, and that's largely what's going to happen. We don't have a shelter license. We have no interest in having a shelter license because, like I said, we all work full-time jobs. And so this was just a passion. And I think that despite the fact that we've shown responsible behavior for 20 years, we're still being treated as if, we can't be trusted with the animals that we've brought in. And I think that across the board is going to be detrimental to the animal population outside of Colorado.
Brittany, thank you so much for your comment. Our next individual with their hand raised is Courtney. Courtney, I'm promoting you to speaker. If you can come off of mute. Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I appreciate the time today. I opened up my mobile dog grooming business just about 2 years ago in the northern Colorado area. And being a new business owner and a young business owner, we have faced numerous difficulties on just getting up and running. And one thing that we face is we do see a lot of senior pets and a lot of senior folks as well that cannot provide vaccine records. Either they don't have family to help take them to get their animal vaccinated, or they simply cannot find it, or they're just too elderly to continue to get the vaccines for the animal itself. We also live in an area where there is absolutely no public transportation, which makes it extremely difficult for people just to even get around to do those things, as times are extremely tough for people. I'm just appreciative that we're still getting calls that people are wanting to groom their pets and take care of their animals as far as the grooming side of things. But not only that, but asking people for information when you're a new business. Half the people think that we're a scam. The other half are just very reluctant on giving any sort of information until they actually see us in person. And asking for those records day of service is nearly impossible to get them done and to get the animal groomed and to make a buck at the end of the day. I just really hope that the rulemaking gets a second opinion as far as the vaccines here in Colorado. Thank you.
Courtney, thank you for your comment. Our next individual with their hand raised is Christiana Klein. Christiana, I'm promoting you to speaker. If you can come off of mute. Okay, you have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Christiana Klein, and I'm a professional pet groomer and small business owner who has dedicated decades to the care and well-being of animals. I'm here to speak out against what I believe is a growing pattern of overreach by PACFA and to strongly oppose the new proposed vaccine mandate that places enforcement responsibilities directly onto groomers. Let me be clear, I'm not anti-vaccine. I support responsible pet care and public health, but this mandate does not ask groomers to simply follow policy. It asks us to become the enforcers of state law without training, without legal protection, and without support. We are not animal control officers. We are not veterinarians. We are service providers. Under this new rule, we are expected to deny service, police paperwork, and potentially turn clients away, some of whom are longtime patrons who may have legitimate exemptions or medical concerns. We risk damaging our relationships, hurting our businesses, and opening ourselves up to conflict and liability. This is not the first time PACFA has overstepped. In recent years, we've seen increased fees, convoluted inspections, inconsistent enforcement, and constant shifting of regulations. Each new requirement is introduced with minimal industry input and rarely with clarity or consideration of the realities of running a small business. We are being treated like regulatory scapegoats, shouldering burdens that should belong to licensed veterinarians or public health departments, not groomers. This sets a dangerous precedent. What will we be asked to enforce next? Our job is to provide care, compassion, and cleanliness, not confrontation. I urge PACFA to reconsider the mandate. If enforcement is necessary, let it fall on those who are properly trained and authorized to carry it out, not small business owners just trying to make a living. This proposed rule vaccine isn't just a policy update. It's a statewide vaccine mandate for all Colorado citizens being backdoored through groomers. PACFA is attempting to use pet professionals, groomers, trainers, daycares, rescues, and untrained, unpaid agents of public health enforcement. That is not our job. That is not within PACFA's legal authority. Colorado does not allow unelected bureaucratic bodies to create or enforce public health mandates. That power lies with the legislature. PACFA's authority by statute is to regulate the humane treatment of animals in facilities like grooming salons, boarding facilities, rescues, and breeders. Nowhere does that authority extend to regulating the medical decisions of Colorado citizens, especially through coercion via denial of services. This proposed rules compels groomers to act as gatekeepers, checking pet medical records under the threat of fines or license penalties. It forces us to deny service to families who, for medical, religious, or personal reasons, are not vaccinating against diseases that have nothing to do with our job or the health of the pets we groom. It weaponizes our business against our own communities. That is not a public safety, that is government overreach cloaked in concern. We will be made to enforce a
Fiona,
mandate.
thank you so much for your public comment. We are at the 3 minutes, so if you can please email me the remainder of your comments, I can make sure that they are included in the hearing record. Thank you. Our next individual we have under iPhone. I'm going to bring you off of mute, but if you can please provide your name. So the individual under iPhone, can you please provide your name?
Can you hear me? Sorry, are you there?
Yes, we are.
Hi, my name is Brittany. I am also a dog groomer. Our last speaker, I don't remember her name, but she hit the nail on the head. We are being expected to carry out a lot of things that are not within the scope of our job. We have not been trained to do. We are not being paid to do. It is extremely difficult for me as a mobile groomer to have a conversation with a person who has an elderly pet that doesn't need vaccines because they barely get out of bed. I have quite a few very senior citizen, very old pets that cannot get vaccines. They don't need vaccines because they don't go anywhere. And expecting me to turn those clients away because their pet owners are doing what they think is best for their pet is going to take money out of my pocket. It's going to affect my ability to groom pets, but it's also going to make people stop getting their pets groomed, stop getting them groomed professionally. You're going to see more incidents in the vet of dogs being cut, cats being cut. I can provide a million photographs of animals that are already matted and neglected, and their only restriction is cost. If their additional restriction to cost is also going to be that they have to have constant proof of vaccines, they're not going to get their pets groomed, and we're just going to see more and more neglect that's already prevalent in this state. I don't really need the whole 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Okay, our next individual is Bill. Bill, I am moving you to speaker, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. My wife Janet spoke earlier. We're the owners of Stubby's Dog Wash and Grooming and Furry Friends in Colorado Springs. I agree with what everybody has said in regards to opposing the new vaccine mandates for grooming salons. I just want to make a couple points. I think number one, the sanitization standards and the no commingling standards that PACFA currently has in place and that are followed by businesses who are doing the right thing already cover the concern of the possible spread of infectious disease. I think this is a redundancy, an unnecessary redundancy and overreach. Number two, this proposed rule change stems from one incident of rabies from puppies. I think when you propose a rule change that has such widespread impact, it reminds me of an old saying that if all you have is a hammer, then everything's a nail. So as opposed to taking individual cases and looking at them and trying to figure out a policy that will address that issue, like sanitization and like commingling in a grooming facility, that's the way to do it, as opposed to blanket policies, blanket overreach, blanket extra, blanket enforcement of things that are not necessary. It's already been proven that the sanitization protocols and the no commingling policies in grooming facilities already solve and prevent the spread of disease. So I think this needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Grooming facilities are different. Like other people have said, I agree with all those statements. There's no commingling already. And I am not against vaccines. We have a boarding facility at one of our locations, and we follow the boarding vaccine rules to a T. So I think there's a difference between grooming and boarding and daycare. And so I think blanket policies just don't apply and shouldn't be made that way. Also, this, like others have said, this is in direct contradiction of state law. As a former law enforcement officer, laws need to be followed and not circumvented through rules. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Our next individual with their hand raised who has not yet made public comment is Viviana Nickerson. Viviana, I am promoting you to speaker. If you can come off of mute, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you so much. I wasn't really prepared to speak today, so I'm just gonna speak from the heart here. I am a Colorado resident, small business owner. I also recently joined Wolf and Willow Puppy Rescue. And I have obviously dogs of my own. I have kids. And what I want to speak to the most is we're kind of missing the bigger picture here. Some of the proposed rules risk unintentionally hindering all the efforts our rescues are doing to save these puppies' lives and dogs of all ages, to be honest, but puppies in specific. Instead of adding all these barriers, why don't we focus on long-term sustainable reform that other countries have actually managed to control their dog populations humanely without resorting to euthanasia? It really makes us seem like more like a developing nation when it comes to animal welfare than the nation we should be, full of animal lovers and all these people speaking from just pure passion. And like somebody else said, we all have our own businesses, families, and things to worry about. We do this, at least from the rescue point of view, purely from passion. It's all on a volunteer basis. We rely on volunteers, transporters, fosters, advocates. So why do we want to resort to all these blanket rules instead of actually trying to partner with the people that are doing the work? And let's focus on something we can do long term. That's really all I wanted to say.
Viviana, thank you for your comment. Our final individual who has not yet made public comment today is with Well-Groomed Pets. I am promoting you to speaker. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. First of all, we opened our grooming shop, and this is in regard to Rule 1953. We've opened our grooming shop in July of 2023. From the beginning, we required all of the subject vaccines mandated under the requirement, even though it was not required by PACFA. We did this for the health and safety of the pets. Key is that distemper and bordetella can spread through inhaled respiratory droplets, making surface sanitation only one means to help prevent this, but not a guaranteed means. Parvo, distemper, and bordetella can spread through contaminated surfaces and even via clothing or skin. So even the groomers can carry this from pet to pet. They're not gonna, obviously it's inconvenient for the groomers to go shower every day. And we note that the grooming salons are communal environments because the dogs are in the same facilities and breathing the same air, subject to that same spread. From a business standpoint, we've heard people worry that this will impact their businesses. We, since opening, as I mentioned, since opening, we have required these vaccinations. The impact to the business has been minimal, and we've been able to grow the business month over month since July 2023 when we began mandating these. With regard to medical autonomy for the pet owners, I've heard the arguments, agree with some of them, but we also have to consider that there's a communal nature to the grooming industry. We help protect the health and the grooming salons and boarding facilities. I want to, but rather than giving my own opinions here, I want to cite several key ones. Cornell University College of Veterinary Medicine noted that Bordetella infections are highly contagious and transmitted via direct contact, inhalation of infected droplets, and contaminated via items such as water, litters, cages, and so forth. We also note that this is a zoonotic virus and can be transmitted to humans as well as other animals. We are therefore in support of these vaccinations. The American Veterinary Medical Association cites distemper can cause severe illness, neurological damage, and even death to vulnerable dogs. We believe that the proactive vaccination of these animals is in the public interest and services both the animal and the pet parents due to the spread. Parvo itself is easily spread through direct contact, contaminated surfaces, and human clothing. Again, this is per the American Veterinary Medical Association.
Thank you very much for your comments. You are at 3 minutes now, but if you do have additional ones, please email them to cda_rulemaking@state.co.us so that they can be included in the official hearing record. Our next individual with their hand raised is Jennifer Handy. Jennifer, I am promoting you to speaker. If you can come off of mute, it looks like you have 3 minutes.
Thank you for letting me speak. And I know you had said he was the last individual, but I was just trying to figure out how not to be too emotional while speaking. So I was gathering my breathing. I wanted to agree with Dana, Brittany, Crystal, and Connie, and everyone else who has spoken from firsthand experience on rescue and foster work. As a retired teacher in Colorado, I know firsthand how blanket policy can hinder instead of help. Enacting the PACFA rules for foster care, transport, and rabies protocols is like trying to keep a litter of puppies safe during a snowstorm by tossing one giant blanket over them and walking away. The stronger ones might wiggle out and find shelter, but the smallest, the weakest, and the most vulnerable, they stay trapped underneath that same blanket. What was meant to protect them ends up dooming their very lives it was supposed to save. Blanket rules sound simple, but in rescue work, simplicity can be dangerous or deadly. These regulations threaten to smother the very organizations that are already raising the bar for safety and accountability. Instead of punishing those that are making the real progress, we should be empowering them to continue saving lives, the lives that will be lost if rigid rules replace thoughtful, experience-driven care. Please don't let well-intentioned policy become a death sentence for those already facing the uphill battle. Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you for your comments. Our next individual with their hand raised is Eli. Eli, I am promoting you to speaker. If you can come off of mute. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Alrighty. I hadn't really planned on speaking today, but I guess I'm going to speak on the behalf of just kind of the general reptile keepers. I'm not a big name breeder. I'm not a small name breeder. I'm just someone with a few snakes and a couple of lizards. The new regulations that are proposed, I think, is very much reasonable as far as the 50% for the snakes. When it comes to the regulations on enclosures, when it comes to unethical keeping in the reptile industry, it is just not tolerated. People who are in this industry or in this business, they do not tolerate people who do not see, I guess, other people fit to be in this industry, and we will bar them. This community is very tight-knit, as the breeders are, with cats, dogs, birds, etc. And this is something where we do take the livelihood of these animals very seriously. It is something, too, where I think that the proposed regulations for lowering numbers, it is in good faith for going ahead and saying, if you are going to be a business, you need to be regulated. There are people that are, again, out here and they do not care, and those people do need to be punished. But the general keeping and the general public, should not see the backfire of the bad doing. One bad apple doesn't spoil the bunch, but in return, it is something where we again do need to see some changes that are going to be fit. Again, there are different species of snakes that do have different regulations and different requirements, as in temperature, humidity. And there are snakes that will use every bit of that, but there are arboreal snakes and snakes like green tree pythons. They will go ahead and they will sit on a perch all day long. They don't go on the ground. They don't really do anything. And while they might explore that height inside of the required enclosure, what exactly is fit for the length of said body? Because these snakes, again, do not move. Ball pythons, again, they are animals where in Africa, they spend a lot of their time in termite mounds. And sure, they have the ability to explore, but if you put them in too big of an enclosure, they might be stressed, they might not eat, and actually it can cause health issues to the snake. So while I agree with everything that everybody has been said, or what everyone has said, it is a thing where we do need to take it into consideration on what is done. And it needs to be done where it's going to be both ethical for the animals and for the people. Again, thank you everybody for all your time, for being here today. And that is all I have to say.
Eli, thank you very much for your public comment. Our next individual with their hand raised is Brooke. Brooke, can you please, apologies. One moment. Our individual that we need to speak is Brooke. Brooke, I'm promoting you. Can you come off of mute? And Brooke, can you please provide your last name so we can...
Almerahi, I've already given public comment. I just wanted to put on record that I concur with what...
So Brooke, apologies, but each individual only has 3 minutes to provide their public comment. So individuals who have already provided, you've extended the 3 minutes, but please email me to show your support for other individuals who have provided their public comment, and we can include that as part of the public record. Thank you so much. Our next individual is going to be Tom. Tom, you have your hand raised. If you can come off of mute. Tom, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I started this morning to write a speech or something to do this 3 minutes justice, but I wrote it 100 times and rewrote it 100 times. And I have to agree with Jennifer, who was just on there, Brittany, Connie Vargas, I think was the most important person that I've heard this entire morning. And I am a foster. I've been doing it for 2 years. I've fostered over 50 puppies in my house. I wish I would have started doing it earlier in my life. This is a hard thing. Trying to pigeon-toe all of the businesses that don't do the same thing. I work with the people that all just volunteer. Nobody gets paid for what we do. These people get together every week and try to get puppies adopted. They nurse puppies that are a week old every 2 hours, sometimes 8 to 10 puppies in a litter. They do everything they can to keep these dogs alive. We do so many things that are good, cleanliness things, the things I see that we do at our rescue to protect these animals. And then for, excuse me, anybody to come in and pigeon-toe everybody like the rescue that just had the rabies case is so sad because, I can't liken it to anything. If you go to a restaurant and you get sick because of something going on in that restaurant, do you close all the restaurants in Colorado? I don't know what else to liken this to, but it's pigeon-toeing everybody that, excuse me, that we all do the same thing. And I think that's disappointing. We rescue probably 1,200 puppies a year, I think is what I've seen. And I'm so proud of the rescue that I volunteer for. And what the good things that they do. I didn't go to work this morning. I laid in bed this morning with a mama puppy. She's 1 year old. Just came into Colorado with 7 puppies that, just like Connie Vargas said, I think Texas would have euthanized these puppies. because they couldn't get them here fast enough because of this rabies law that we're talking about putting in effect that could potentially close a small rescue like what we have. And that just tears me up. Jennifer was very emotional about this issue because this is real. What we do makes a difference in the world, and I want to keep being able to do that. So please make the law more broad so that we can get exceptions and do the things that we want to do to save these puppies. Literally, it's thousands a year with all the rescues, and it's going to be thousands of euthanasias if we can't keep doing what we're doing.
Tom, thank you for your comments. Our next individual with their hand raised is going to be Rocky Mountain Cocker Rescue. I'm promoting you to speaker if you can come off of mute. Rocky Mountain Cocker Rescue, you've been promoted to speaker. If you can please come off of mute.
Hi, Madison.
Okay, you have 3 minutes. We can hear you. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Audra Bowen, volunteer and president for 12 years with Rocky Mountain Cocker Rescue. We are a foster-based rescue serving Colorado and all the states surrounding us. We adopt approximately 175 dogs a year. I'd like to speak about the increase in vaccination requirements for dogs, specifically the increase for rescues and groomers. For many groomers, this could be a records management and administrative nightmare. It will result in huge financial investments, in turn causing higher costs to the pet owners, including the costs that rescues pay to have their dogs groomed. Pet owners on limited budgets will simply not take their dogs to the groomers. This will be detrimental to the health of the dog. How? Their hair will grow in between their paws, causing bacteria. Nails can grow to lengths which can pierce their puppy pads. In addition, many groomers find the injuries, bumps, and skin concerns that some owners are not trained to find and identify. Also, their hair will become matted and will pull on their skin, causing wounds and possible disabilities, preventing them to walk properly. Many will not get vaccinated until a few days prior to their grooming appointment. This will cause many dog owners to fill appointments at groomers. I'm sorry, they will have appointments at veterinarians for a vaccination that will not be any good by the time they take the dog to the groomer. There is a time of period between the Bordetella shot and its effectiveness. The risk of kennel cough is the same prior to the vaccination. This will increase the number of intakes for all rescues. Please consider the timeline and the vaccinations required for groomers and rescues. Thank you for allowing me and others the opportunity to express our thoughts and opinions today.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next individual with their hand raised is Carly. Carly, I am promoting you to speaker. If you can please come off of mute. Carly, it looks like you're still muted. Okay, Carly, we are not able to hear you off of mute. We are going to go to our next individual. Christy Harvey, if you can come off of mute, please. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you so much. I am a volunteer at the Colorado Puppy Rescue, like others here who've spoken. I have been for a few years now. I just wanted to come on here and say that, I hope and trust that everyone on the call today who has spoken truly has the best interest of the animals who will be impacted by these laws in mind. The victims here are going to be the very beings that we are all trying to help, and that's puppies. Many people have said this before, but I want to reiterate, if we have to wait to bring them in for this rabies vaccination, many, if not most of them, are going to end up being euthanized for lack of space at the rescues we take them from. They're going to be left on the streets, they're going to be euthanized, and they're going to have nowhere to go. And that's not okay. So I just want to make sure that we keep in mind who will truly be the victims of this law. I think, for me personally, the other part of the law that would impact my family specifically is not being able to be in contact with kids under 16 and with other dogs. Fostering puppies has been major for my family, specifically for my kids. They are under 16. They look forward to having foster puppies. I think it's taught them empathy. It's taught them the importance of caring for someone other than themselves, and taught them responsibility. And to bring in a puppy and not have it feel that love and not have it be able to, be in contact with my other dogs who are the best dogs that you can have in the world when you're fostering. They're such good teachers, and, teaching these dogs how to dog. That's going to be nothing but harmful for them to be isolated from. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Christy, thank you for your comments. Our next individual that I'm going to promote to speaker is April. April, if you can come off of mute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. My name is April Ure, and I also work with Colorado Puppy Rescue. I couldn't agree with Christy Harvey more with the new proposed rabies requirement. There are so many puppies that just need homes already, and having them wait to be brought into Colorado to help them out from other rescues where they just need to get out of those shelters and into foster homes would just be so detrimental, and they would just probably end up being euthanized and increase backyard breeders here in Colorado. I would agree with her as well that my kids who are also under 16 really look forward to helping out puppies. And I feel like it's taught them a lot to just work towards something bigger than themselves to, help these animals that can't help themselves. And they just get so happy when we can find a family for them to go to. And it just has really taught them responsibility and everything. And I just am pleading to not change this requirement because, who we work with, I know that they take all of the rules and regulations very, very seriously and even go above and beyond to keep all of these puppies safe and make sure that they're healthy and hold them in any case where, something seems a little off. And, I don't think they'd be able to operate if this went into effect. So thank you for letting me speak. And thank you.
April, thank you for your comments. Our next individual with their hand raised is James Nicolisi. James, I am promoting you to speaker. If you can come off of mute. James, it looks like you're still muted. If you can come off of mute.
I apologize. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, we can. Thank you. You
Okay.
have 3 minutes.
Sorry, my name is actually Jennifer Nicolosi. My husband had to step away for a quick moment. I'm also in agreement with most of the other rescues who have made comment as well today. I feel that this oversight with such a blanket rule will unfortunately create a detriment to all of these puppies and kittens that we are attempting to save and help bring them into our own communities from outlying states. Unfortunately, blanket rules always tend to bring to light the oversight requirements that tend to more or less create additional barriers versus helping the overall goal of these animals that we are trying to help. I think that this calls for more of a broader scope to include these communities that are impacted more. So having more of a committee that would involve the entities that are going to be affected, such as rescues, I think that's an important piece that we need to look at and address, as blanket rules don't work for everyone.
Thank you.
And that's all that I have.
Thank you very much. Our next individual with their hand raised is Jenna Francis Bryant. Jenna, I am promoting you to speaker. If you can please come off of mute.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, I want to echo what a lot of people said about the rabies vaccination requirement, and also just to speak on the fact that I'm aware that there's an exemption, and I think that's great that people are trying to give ways for dogs to not have to get vaccinated at an age that they're too young to be vaccinated. But this effectively makes shelters useless and rescues useless in terms of saving these puppies, because as a volunteer for a foster-based rescue myself, the exemption that requires puppies to be held in non-foster homes is impossible for rescues that can't hold puppies at their location. And many fosters, including my family when I was younger than 16, would no longer be able to be a holding place for these dogs. And like a lot of people have said, this is a rule that will just cause so many puppies to die because they won't be able to come to Colorado, and they'll be stuck in states where they cannot be vaccinated or saved. And I think it's just a really important thing to acknowledge that while there were rabies cases, and that was a really hard thing for people to watch these dogs have to die to get tested for rabies, it's kind of a situation where it's a handful of dogs every few years, or hopefully for not very many years to come, dying, or thousands of dogs dying every year because they can't come into the state. So I think it's just really important when we're thinking about this rule to consider how many puppies will not be saved by this rule, even though its intentions are positive.
Thank you, Jenna. Our next individual with their hand raised is Sarah. Sarah, if you can please come off of mute.
Hi.
Okay, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I am Sarah Davis. I am the business owner of Sisters Pooch Caboose Mobile Dog Grooming. I only have one dog on my bus at a time. Whether this household has multiple dogs or just one dog, it's only one dog at a time. So I have zero intermingling between my dogs, and I also clean in between each of my dogs. When we had the doggy COVID outbreak in the country, this state had 0 outbreaks. And in my facility, we also had 0 outbreaks of it. I do believe that all of our cleaning regulations that every licensed groomer is required to do is enough. And I also believe that this is an overreach to require our clientele to spend more money and may not even be able to afford it or be able to take those vaccines because their dogs are too old. I do believe that these extra vaccines should be discussed between our clientele and the veterinarians who are qualified and who have learned all these things to recommend these things and to do these things. We are not qualified to do anything involving veterinary care. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next individual with their hand raised for public comment is Jenny Smith. Jenny, I'm promoting you to speaker. If you can please come off of mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Jennifer Smith, and I'm a nationally certified master groomer, and I am one of the few groomers in the state that have been grooming since before PACFA's inception. I remember what it was like before we had PACFA, and while I agree with almost everything that you guys have put into effect to help promote the welfare of the animals in our care and grooming salons, the one thing that I do not agree with is the vaccine in 19.5.3 requirements, but specifically, I think that it should be reworded to say that we require the rabies vaccine as it is state mandated by state statute. I don't believe that it should be inclusive of Bordetella and the Parvo vaccine, as there is no state statute or county statute that requires those vaccines to be administered by any vet. It's just common practice. And I feel like this could lead to a huge burden on the grooming community or the grooming salon owners and the clients themselves having to provide that proof of vaccinations. That's it.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, everyone. This now concludes our public comment period because every individual has had their own 3 minutes to present public comment. If individuals do feel like they require more than that allotted time, please email cda_rulemaking@state.co.us with your comments, and we can make sure that those are included as part of our hearing record. The commissioner will consider all oral comments, written comments, and provided comments submitted by the close of business today, which is 5 p.m. Once these rules are finalized, they will be presented to the Colorado Agricultural Commission for discussion and recommendation for approval at a meeting on May 15th of 2025. The public is welcome to attend that meeting. However, additional public comment on this proposed rule will not be taken at that time. If approved by the commission, the final rules will be adopted by the commissioner and published in the Colorado Code of Regulations on June 25th, 2025, and they will become effective on or after July 15th of 2025. Thank you to all who have taken the time to participate in this hearing. Individuals who were present were offered the opportunity to provide public comment, and pre-registered individuals were given the same. Any written comments submitted again before the close of business today, which is 5 p.m., will be considered as part of our rulemaking process, and this hearing is now closed. Thank you all.